All right, MKP, B. Crittenden Freeman here. It's been a minute, hasn't it, since I connected with you. All right, so this is my last message, my last email, my last video message to y'all. I'm moving on. Let's move the Wayback Machine to 1995. So back then, I attended a New Warrior Network business meeting. Philadelphia, I believe it was in. And I attended that meeting because I wanted to deal with the subject that had to come up. It was all about scholarship dollars moved to pay off a short-term cash flow problem in regards to the insurance. Then Executive Director Joe Lauer was the one who made the decision to move the money. The scholarship was for black men. At the time, I had a man I wanted to go through the weekend. Suddenly, there was no money. He couldn't go through. And I wanted to dialogue and challenge that decision. It was an unethical decision. And so I went to the meeting and began to discuss it very calmly, very quietly, very diplomatically. And that was met by screaming and yelling from a man named Michael Greenwald. At that time, the organization did not have the skill sets to know how to work with that situation. The purpose of Michael's screaming and yelling was to intimidate me into silence, and it worked. What nobody knew back then was that I was very emotionally fragile. So after he began yelling and screaming, I sat there in terrified silence. And for 3 weeks afterward, in a state of suicidal ideation. My big takeaway from that experience, however, was that if we are caring, compassionate men, and I hope we would show up and not want to go off on someone, not want to make threats to another men, not want to threaten men with violence because we don't know the emotional makeup of other men, because we are not on the same journey, on the same path, because we have no idea if men even have a shield. And having that frame, that state of being, I hope that we would want to make the decision of, I'm not going to go off because I don't want to do something that might cause, in which a man might have that thought, that state of being of pain. So that was my big takeaway. Now, why am I sharing about this? So years later, it was my decision to advocate for men within the organization of standing up to violence and threats of violence within the MKP. That effort took about 3 years, almost 3 years. Finally, it did occur in 2018. MKP put in place a safer circle policy. Now, for me to do that, I had to go into what I call civil disobedience and protest, boycott, to get attention for MKP to address the issue. Now, I'm saying that to you to let you know that is the type of caring, compassionate man that I am, that I will go as far as civil disobedience, boycott, protest, to bring attention to an issue. So, here's the thing. Within MKP, there are secret, unwritten rules. Shouldn't be, but there are. Such as the civil disobedience, the boycotts, the protests. Those are taken as though they are anti-MKP. They are anti the organization. That is not the intention. That is not the purpose. That is not the want. The want, of course, is the dialogue, the communication, the let's come together and talk. The real question is, what is the resistance to coming together and talking? And I can tell you, I do know what the big resistance is: classism. MKP still has a lot of elitism to itself. Those who are the good enough for men to meet and those who are not good enough for men to want to meet. It's attempting to work on that through its workshops, but it still has a long way to go. But in that long way to go, men are hurt. Men become hurt and men leave. And with the reflection of the George Floyd torture/murder tragedy, the opportunity and the gift was to let's examine, let's assess. And again, because of all this classism, it was an extremely big stretch for MKP to even attempt to do it. Now, why am I sharing all of that? Because of the whole George Floyd, I wanted to talk with the board. And I'm not going to go into all the details because I've shared all the details, but I wanted to talk with the board. The board was unable to make that decision of, hey, let's talk with this man because of all the classism. And again, I went through my civil disobedience. The board doesn't know, has the skill set to know how to work with that. So they placed me on the MKP limited activity list. That's not conflict resolution. That's not coming together and working together. That's pushing apart. And that's really not what all this work is about. The 1995 experience, that's not what this work is about. The placing man on the limited activity list because one does not understand what he's doing or requesting, that's not what this work is about. The real question through all of these situations is, what stopped men from meeting with the man and from listening and from dialoguing, doing what I refer to as interactive listening, and seeing what gifts are there? And that's really the big point. We have moved away from that here in MKP. Way back, and I've been with MKP back since 1993. I came in January 93, went through what was then referred to as New World Houston, attended all 3 leadership trainings by Ron Herring, so I'm Ron Herring trained. Many times we would ask men, what's the gift in this for you? What's the reflection here for you? We don't do that now. A lot of what we do is we put it on the other man. You're having an impact on somebody. You're a vampire. You're a container buster. But we don't look at the man who's saying, you're triggering me. No, you're choosing to be triggered. I'm pissed off at you. No, you're choosing to be pissed off. We've lost that part of our work because we're choosing to be so politically correct. And part of that has to do with the multicultural workshops that have been brought to the organization, which are an attempt to bring people together for greater understanding and clarity. We need to get back to that part of our work because not doing that is causing men to give into their inner wounded child's shadows and make decisions of exclusion. Things like vampire and container buster, those are just name calling. Sticking stones when they make my bones, yada, yada, yada. It's just name calling. There's no resolution in that. We all need to be aware of all those dynamics, not participate in them, and see what are the gifts in there. Now, in my case of the being on the MKP limited activity list, I have, in fact, held out the olive branch, say, hey, let's come together. Let's resolve this. They have been unable to, again, because they're in that space of classism and in that space of rigidity. Nothing I can do to move them past that. So what do I see that may help move past that? Organizations, people, thoughts, they put time, attention, and money to that which they believe is important. Time, attention, money, education, training. As you can see, the organization puts a lot of time, attention, money, training, education to weekend leadership. It does not do any of that for its ethics and right relationships committee, its peer reviews, its ethics policy. As such, we have men in positions not able to function at the best, at the highest. And I can say the same thing about the position of area steward. Functioning as an I-group facilitator in the position of area steward or center director does not best serve the man who's in that position. The man who's in that position is a manager of people, an administrative manager of people who has to do such things as negotiations, time management, conflict resolution, coaching. Coaching is an extremely valuable skill to bring to that position. We do not do any type of training education in that. And I'm just using that as a point of reference. But bringing that education and training will assist. Conflict resolution workshop, that will assist those in that ethics whole arena to make it better. I choose not to participate in that until that is reached, that goal is reached of education and training. For me, it makes no logical sense to engage with men who are completely lacking in this ability and are coming from a place of shadow and inner wounded child. Makes no sense for it, so I choose not to do it. Now, overall, MKP, get back to principle-centered leadership, not power-based leadership, not manipulation-based leadership. Charisma-based leadership is okay as long as one is able to keep the principles out in front. And you all know what the principles are. Freedom of speech. Let's all treat each other with simple common courtesy and respect, compassion and caring. Warrior is all about protection and boundaries, coming from a compassionate point of view. All this stuff is not about anger, hatred. Principle-centered leadership. All this will be very, very helpful in terms of moving forward. Now, I had said back then that I wanted to meet with the board of directors. What are some of the things I wanted to discuss? I'm just going to hit on some of them very briefly. All the protests you all experienced around the globe had a common theme: no justice, no peace. So what were people experiencing? Obviously a lack of justice. What did people want? They wanted justice. Within MKP, just within MKP, is there justice? Well, there can't be justice if men don't know how to do it because they lack the training and education. How does that impact? You have a world where various groups experience pain and a lack of justice. Black, Jewish, Italian, gays. They have these wounds. MKP says, hey, we've got this gift. We call it the gift of initiation, which we believe is very helpful for many groups. Nothing wrong with that. We want to share this gift. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. The groups have a great deal of mistrust. Does MKP have the skill set to connect and work past that mistrust? No, doesn't. But gays, non-gay men reaching out to gay men, does it have all that? No. MKP reaching out to black groups? No. So the opportunity, which was missed, is to reach out that and understand how the lack of justice continues the historical and generation separation because the historical generation wounding is still continuing, which you all know from the news. And that was just one of the things that I wanted to share, talk about with the board of directors, and talk about the opportunities that were in front of us with some suggestions. And I'll give you just one suggestion right now in terms of what we refer to as outreach to different groups. Let's say outreach to black groups. A very simple, a very, very simple technique is have someone who looks like the people you want to reach be the one to go out and do the outreaching. Very simple technique. And what that looks like is perhaps a center can pay someone, some type of person, an elder, an individual, perhaps a leader, to go out and be a part of a group that does outreach to, I don't know, some group somewhere, and connect about this gift of initiation, which we do. Have that person be the face of MKP. And there is challenges with that because of the shadow within the black community, and the shadow being black community does not support the black community. And that's something the black community does not want to make public. Black community does not like to air dirty laundry. That's the truth. However, it's been done, and I can give you examples. But that's just one thing that can be done. Now, once that starts to happen, it then becomes a, what if we're successful and now we have within an area a lot of black men? Can we all be friends? Are we all going to get along? Are we all going to understand each other's sensibilities, needs? That requires a lot of work. I prefer that work be collaborative, not separate. I'm going to stop there. That's a lot. So that's just a little bit I wanted to discuss. Overall, my big suggestion is for MKP is get back to principle-centered leadership. Get back, everyone, to looking at what is the gift here in this for me. Get back to let me work on my shadow. Not, oh, I'm impacted this. You don't realize how much you're impacting me. No. Let me take a look. Okay. Ownership. I'm triggered. What am I triggered about? Saying things like, you embarrass me. No, I am choosing to be embarrassed. Get back to that work. The current education and multiculturalism, it's not hitting all this. That needs to be expanded upon. Principle-centered leadership will take you off of power-based leadership. That's it. This is the last message I'll be sending out. This is the last video message I'll be sending out. Apologize for the sunglasses. I'm having problems with my eyes. Have a good summer.